Let me ask you this. If you were on a first date or you just met someone new, do you tell them all your deepest, darkest secrets in the first 5 minutes? Hopefully not. Because why would you tell your deepest, darkest secrets to a stranger? You don't open up to everybody all at once. And we know that relationships, real ones, take time. But how do we know this? And how do we know how much information to share? Well, in this episode of Communication Campus, we are going to peel back the layers one conversation at a time. This theory is created by wonderful scholars of the names of Altman and Taylor in about 1973. And this is one of the most influential theories of interpersonal communication because it's all about how relationships are deepened through disclosure. Now, social penetration uses a powerful metaphor to explore the relational closeness. They use an onion. Now, while Shrek might be really excited about this layers of onion and not the parfait, we think about how we get to know someone through these layers, from the surface to the core. Now, the layers of this onion start with peripheral, and this is going to be our biographical information, our preferences, the polite talk, our thoughts on the weather, for example. And then we go further in to our intermediate layers. And this is going to be where we share our opinions, our goals, our personal interests. And all the way in is the core, our deep values, our self-concept, our fears, our identity. Now, I have to say that I think they possibly chose an onion because the deeper you get into the onion, the more likely you are to cry. Now, I don't know if that's actually what they thought about, but it's always kind of what I've thought about. If I'm just focusing on that surface level, I'm not really at risk. I'm probably not going to cry about the weather. Although if it snowed all the time and never gave up, I'd probably cry. But the deeper we get into that conversation, the deeper we get into sharing things about ourselves, well, more likely we might cry, depending on the topic. Now, according to Altman and Taylor, self-disclosure is a primary process by which relationships move from superficial to intimate. It's by peeling away these layers, becoming more and more vulnerable, that we get to build that trust and closeness. Now, besides these layers, we also have the range of topics, and this is known as breadth, the types of topics that we are willing to share. For example, I will talk about my 2 dogs, my fur children, any day of the week, all day long. And I'm probably going to share deep information with you about them because I feel really comfortable sharing with you about my fur children. Now, related to that, the fact that I don't have children, biological children of my own, I'm far less likely to talk about. And what I'm willing to talk about in relations to that is probably going to stay pretty close up until I really get to know you, until I have developed that trust. And that level of trust and how deep I'm willing to go is considered the depth. So the breadth is the range of topics. The depth is how deep into that topic am I willing to go. And the last piece of information that you really need to know about this is this idea of reciprocity. And that is, how much do I share with you and how much do you share with me? If I share that I have fur children and you share that you also, that's going to move us into deeper layers of connection because we've built that connection. If I share that with you and you don't share anything in return, well, then we're probably going to stay at that superficial level because I'm not getting anything back from what I gave to you. Now, early on, we match that depth. You tell me something mildly personal, I offer something at that same level. But as trust builds, the disclosure begins to deepen, and we let others into those darker places of our inner world. Now, some main theoretical principles with here that we need to take into consideration is first that predictability and law-like progression. All right. I assume, based on this theory, that if I share things with you, that you will share with me. And when you don't do that, well, then we jump back to that expectancy violations theory. Or if you overshare, you give me too much information. Oh gosh, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that. Because this theory says that this should be a predictable pattern of progression. I share something on a level 1, you share something on a level 1, maybe 2 back, but we wouldn't jump to level 10. This also has a principle of social exchange underpinning. And our social exchange theory says that we weigh the costs and rewards with every interaction. It's kind of like emotional math. What is the benefit I give from sharing this with you versus the potential cost? Could you take this information and use it against me? Could you share it with people that I wouldn't want you to share it with? And that's really important for us to think about when we are deciding what to disclose. And if you are talking with somebody who has experienced trauma and has experienced harm from sharing information, then it's entirely possible that they may not feel comfortable sharing information with you as soon as you may be, given the fact that they've experienced higher levels of danger when they've done so in the past. Now, lastly, we also think about depenetration. And we have to remember that relationships don't just grow, sometimes they regress. Trust is broken. And when that is broken, disclosure, it retreats. We stop sharing as much information because we've been shown that that person is no longer trustworthy. And that's where depenetration comes in. We start putting back the layers between ourselves and that other individual. So now let's think about some modern applications here, shall we? In romantic relationships, we think about how intimacy builds. We start with small talk about our life stories. We find those pieces of commonality. It's casual, and then it builds to emotional. Social penetration theory often is used to study online dating and looking at long distance relationships or even conflict repair. Now, within social media, our Instagram and our TikTok accounts might offer breadth, but not that much depth. There's a lot of surface content. Why? Because it's really hard to get that reciprocity unless you start jumping into the comments section, which is always pretty terrifying from what I've seen. But also, if we're oversharing, this can sometimes jump straight to the core layers because we're not experiencing the feedback from someone right away. We're not seeing that visual impact of saying too much and seeing how they respond. We might see a stitch about it later, but when we are talking to our camera, we are only talking to our camera. And so our brains might not process how much we are over disclosing at that time. So while we can control what we peel back, sometimes we don't always do it, which can be quite fascinating to study. Now, there are critiques and limits with this theory, as there are with many of the others. So, just like classic theories, some argue it's too linear, that not all relationships follow a steady progression. And others point out that it underestimates cultural differences in disclosure. I kind of have to agree with that one because there are definitely some cultures that I've interacted with where sharing a lot of information comes way faster than other cultures. So there's definitely a cultural component here that we really must take into consideration. Also, in today's digital world, the idea of carefully timed vulnerability doesn't really always hold water. Viral confessions, anonymous posts, even online communities challenge the idea that intimacy has to build slowly. So, there's definitely some room for thinking about how culture and technology have an impact on how quickly we are penetrating into those deeper ideas. So here's what we've learned. Social penetration theory explains how relationships deepen through our self disclosure. It sees intimacy as a layered process guided by rewards, trust, and, of course, communication. But the modern tools and shifting norms complicate this model and might be muddying up how we understand how quickly people are sharing information. Now, next time on Communication Campus, we are going to explore uncertainty reduction theory, which is a powerful tool to help us understand why we feel uncomfortable with uncertainty versus others who seem to really enjoy that uncertainty. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. In the meantime, keep communicating.